Hello, good evening to the Test Prep Fair. I'm Helen Thomas, Communications Expert at the Next Genius webinars. In this session, we'll be covering taking SAT in Math, wherein we'll talk about the structure, the format of SAT Math section, and how you can prepare for it. We have Harshvardhan sir with us to talk about SAT Math. Welcome, sir, and it's over to you now.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. All right, friends. Today we'll talk about the SAT Math test. Okay, as we all know, the perfect score here is an 800, and all of us dream to get that 800. Trust me, it's not that difficult. It's just a structured approach that we need in terms of the preparation. But obviously, the first step would be to know what the test is like, what areas are being tested. If we have a complete information regarding this, I'm sure we can always streamline our preparation accordingly. So, welcome to this journey of SAT Math, right? On the SAT Math test, something very typical that you'll see about the SAT, the problems are all grounded in real world content. Okay, math questions are science-based, math questions are social science-based, career-based. Basically, they are very practical problems, or you can say that they are all application-oriented problems rather than just typical theoretical ones. This is a test summary. There are two sections on the SAT. This is section 3 and section 4. Section 3 is a no calculator section. 25 minutes of time, 20 questions. Section 4 is the section where they allow you the use of calculator, 55 minutes and 38 questions. So that makes it a total of 58 questions and a total of 80 minutes to attempt those 58 questions. The types of questions, number one, we have the MCQs or the multiple choice questions. Typically MCQs, the questions would be followed by 4 options. You have to choose the best answer, obviously, and you have to fill the corresponding circle in the OMR sheet. Okay. The second type of questions are grid-ins, 22%. Okay. That means in the first section, we have 5 such questions. And in the second section, we have 8 such questions, making it a total of 13 questions, which are grid-ins. So these are like student generated response questions. You have to solve the problem and you have to enter the correct answer in the grid, which is provided on the OMR sheet. So this is where you don't get the options. You have to solve and you have to fill in the answer that you have obtained. I'll talk about more regarding the grading questions in a while. Coming to what all areas are tested on the SAT Math test, right? So these are the 4 units, you can say, or these are the 4 basic areas which get tested. I've also mentioned the respective weightage of these topics on the actual exam. Okay, so we can see that there are 4 units. Number 1 is Heart of Algebra, 33% weightage, which is roughly 19 questions. Number 2 is Problem Solving and Data Analysis. Now, when I say problem solving, that is mostly arithmetic that you study in standard 8th, 9th, and 10th. Okay, data analysis refers to the statistics portion that you study in high school. Passport to Advanced Math is Higher Algebra, 28% of weightage, 16 questions. And then finally, we have some additional topics primarily covering areas such as geometry, coordinate geometry, trigonometry, etc. Allied topics, you can say 10% weightage, roughly 6 questions on the test. So that is the overall breakup of those 58 questions on the test. As you can see, the 3 or 4 major areas to focus on talking in terms of math. Number 1 is algebra, which has the maximum weightage in the test. Okay. Number 2 is arithmetic, then statistics, and finally geometry. So these are the 4 major areas that we have to target. We need a good score on the SAT. Heart of Algebra, it focuses on linear equations and system of linear equations. Okay. Interpretation of quantities such as the slope, the intercepts, etc. Students will create equations that represent different situations. So there would be word problems. You have to make the equation. You have to solve the equation. You have to make connection between different representations in terms of linear relationships. Mostly the questions are interpretation based. They are not typical, solving the equation question. But then, yes, you do get some questions where you just have to solve the equations as well. Okay, this is just a sample question, as you can see. This is obviously based on what we call as the condition of solvability, or the number of solutions that we have to determine. So basic topic from linear equations would get tested in this particular unit. Number 2, the problem solving and the data analysis portion. 29%, 17 questions. The student must describe relationships shown graphically. So this portion will typically be based on the graphs that we study at high school level, graphs such as the bar graph, histogram, scatter plot, etc. Most of the questions again are simply based on interpretation of the graphs that are given in the question booklet. Student must analyze the data given in terms of graphs or tables. Again, the problems would mostly cover real world situations of science and social sciences. Problems are heavy on ratios, percentages, and proportionate reasoning. Okay, this is the arithmetic portion or the problem solving portion of the second unit. All the questions from this particular unit will typically appear in section 4 only, where the calculator is allowed. So you can rest assured, all this calculation heavy thing, you would have the support of calculator alongside to attempt these kind of questions. Moving on, this is a basic example. As you can see, this is based on fundamental concept of proportionate value or probability. So they have given you an incomplete table, so you just have to fill the table, find the proportionate value or probability. Right? So these are the type of questions that you can get in terms of representation of data. That was based on a table. Third, we come to passport to advanced math. Now, the advanced math basically is advanced algebra once again. We have topics such as complex numbers, theory of quadratic equations and parabolas, transformation of functions, etc. Okay, students must be familiar with complex numbers or concepts such as quadratic equations and parabola, must be able to fluently solve problems related to graphs which are based on quadratic equations, must be able to solve questions which are related to transformation of functions, particularly reflection, translation, etc. Okay. This is an example. As you can see, this is the equation of a parabola. They say it intersects the line with an equation at 2 points. What is the length of that line segment? So obviously you must have a very clear idea how to plot a straight line, how to plot a parabola. On your graphing calculators, how to find this distance AB or the points of intersection. So obviously the calculator is a big help in a lot of questions. And you must have a proficiency in terms of using a graphing device for this particular section. Finally, the additional topics in maths, 10%, 6 questions. As I have already mentioned, this is mostly related to geometry and allied concepts such as trigonometry, coordinate geometry. Students must solve problems related to areas and volumes. Now, one important thing I'd like to mention here, no need to cram the formulae for all the area and volume relationships. They are already provided on the SAT booklet. So the College Board doesn't expect you to cram formulae. All they expect is whether you can apply this formulae and solve the questions based on the formulae. You must know the theorems related to lines, angles, and triangles and circles. Okay. Most of the questions would be pretty straightforward here. Even with the trigonometry, it's just the basic concepts that would get tested, like the definitions of sine theta, cos theta, etc., and the basic relationships between all the trigonometric ratios. Okay, so all in all, that is the breakup of your exam in terms of the topics. Okay, we've already talked about the type of questions and the time allocated here. I'll get into a little bit of details now. The 20 questions that you have in section 3, for those 20 questions, we have 15 multiple choice. So 75% are multiple choice, 5 are student produced or the grid-ins, as I discussed. In the second section, this is the non-calculator, which is broken down in terms of the units or the topics. So we can see that 8, 9, and 3 are the respective questions you get from Heart of Algebra, Passport, Advanced Math, and additional topics. As I have already said, no questions from problem solving and data analysis in section 3. All those questions will appear only in section 4. This is your section 4 of the test, 38 questions, 55 minutes. So 30 questions would be MCQs, 8 questions would be grid-ins. So of those questions, you can see that we have almost every unit covered here. 11 Heart of Algebra, 17 problem solving, 7 Passport to Advanced Math, and 3 additional topics. So that is the breakup of questions in section 4 topic wise. This I was talking about, that you need not cram up the formulae when it comes to geometry. Okay, as you can see, all the area and volume relationships that you would require for the test it is already provided in the question booklet itself. Okay, so a reference sheet for the students is already there. All you are supposed to do is use this formulae in the questions which are there in the actual exam. Student produced responses or the grid-in questions. There are in total 13 out of 58 questions, 5 plus 8 as we discussed. You will have to come up with answers of your own. Now the problem should work out with relatively good answers. Okay, no horrible fractions. So obviously it would be like first place of decimal or at max second place of decimal that you have to work out. Many cases the problems are actually easier than the multiple choice questions, in my opinion, because they are not giving you the options. The level of the problems comes down a bit. So these are the basic instructions that you would also see on your question booklet. As you can see, you can enter all your answers which are fractions or even decimals very easily on the spaces that have been provided in the question booklet. For example, here you can see 7/12, or if you have to enter 2.5, you can enter it like this. Okay. All the mixed fractions have to be converted to improper fractions. So 3.5 is not allowed. You have to make it 7/2 or a 3.5. That would be allowed. You can start from any position unless until you are ending it in the space provided, it would be counted as a correct answer. This is the scoring pattern, the most important part. So you can see that the math section scores, typically, if you want an 800 these days, you need to get all 58 questions correct. It is as simple as that. Even one mistake will take you down by at least 10 points. Okay, so one mistake would make it a 790, two mistakes would make it a 780, and so on and so forth. The score goes down at a much faster rate as you get more and more questions wrong. So at least this much is pretty clear, or should be pretty clear in your head. If you need a perfect 800, you need a perfect 58 in terms of correct answers to all the questions. Coming to the strategies, the most important part of the strategy is that you need to pace yourself, right? When I say pace, so you need to solve all the easier questions first, right? Now, we know that questions are not graded in the sequence. So some of the questions you might come across are difficult. Some of them are easier. So what you need to do is solve all the easier questions first. So in general, the questions would go from easier to harder ones, but then again, the grid-ins would come and they are easier. So what you need to do is pace yourself in a way that you solve all the easier questions first, keep the difficult ones for the last. Every question is worth almost the same point, okay, except one grid-in question, which is worth 4 points. So other than that particular question, every question carries the same weightage. So there is no extra point for any particular question. Very important. Why? Because you shouldn't get stuck up with a particular question while you are solving the test. Okay. Educated guess is always welcome. Okay. Remember, there is no penalty for guessing. If you don't know the answer, you can always make an educated guess. Cross out the answers you can eliminate. Using the choices is very important when you are solving the MCQ questions. Okay. Periodically, you need to check, make sure that the number of questions you're about to answer matches the number of the test booklet. Okay. This is just to avoid, marking a wrong answer or marking in a wrong sequence. Okay. You should never waste time on some particular question. You should always keep on moving in the test. You can always star the problem which you are finding difficult and come back later when you have time for that particular question. Okay. Do not leave any question unanswered. Remember, there is no penalty for wrong answers. So you should attempt all the questions. At least, as I said, you can take a guess where you are not very sure about the answer. Okay. No wild guess, but an educated guess, surely you should take. Pay attention to the units and other keywords. If I can say so, 75% of mistakes on this test, they are not mathematical mistakes. They are mistakes because of reading. Okay, students do not read the questions properly, and that is when they get questions wrong. So please make sure that you read very properly and you note down all the important units, all the important data very carefully, and avoid mistakes which are related to reading. Okay. Try to plug in the answer choices. Try to work backwards with the option choices. That helps saving a lot of time, particularly with the MCQs. This is one thing that you should always try. Okay, beware of figures. They are usually not drawn to scale. So please do not assume anything just looking at a figure that, okay, looking at the figure, oh, this angle looks like 60 degrees. No, shouldn't work like that. Okay, remember, they are not drawn to scale. So not necessary what looks right, is actually right. Utilize the formula or information that is provided to you. So we've already discussed about this part. You need not cram up all the formulae. Now, if you solve a question, okay, and your answer is not there, please make sure that you look for other forms of the answer as well. It is possible that what you have actually calculated is the right answer, just that it is given in some other format. So for example, maybe you solve a question and you come up with a value √3, and on the answer sheet, it is possible that it is given as 1.73. So you need to be aware that √3 is 1.73 and it is there on the answer sheet. So just make sure that you must look for other forms of the answers as well. Some key points related to this test. There is no penalty for wrong answers. So be sure that you have marked all the answers. Okay, the math section with calculator and without calculator. Make sure that with calculator, you do use the calculator. Don't be shy of using the calculator. A lot of students believe that they can solve the question paper without a calculator. Let me say this thing with a lot of confidence here. The graphing calculator can actually make a difference for at least 4 to 5 questions on the test. So please do carry a graphing calculator along with you for the test, and do use it in section 4 wherever you deem fit to use it. Okay, there are 2 types of questions, multiple choice and grid-ins. So grid-ins cannot have negative answers. Please note, when you fill up that answer, okay, the grid-in answer can never be a negative answer. There is no space for a negative sign there. So grid-in answers would always be positive. Use the formulas that they give you. That should help you to solve the problems quickly. That is all from my side in terms of SAT math and the strategies that we should follow to get a good score on the exam. Okay, your questions are most welcome.
Thank you so much, Harshvardhan sir, for that really insightful session.